This is my brother's desk. It's held up by phone boxes and books. I was gonna compare my chair to his chair because his is all the way down and he barely has room. I grabbed my paper, pen, and tape measure and got cracking. I measured out the tabletop, it's 30 inches and I want it to be 3 feet. Next I measured how tall it was about 23 inches and I wanted to raise that to about 29 to 30 inches. This is a terrible drawing, so I'm going to do some magic and make it look better. I ripped it out of my notebook and then I went outside and started working. After I achieved time travel, I went to the garage with my piece of paper and started working. Once I got to my garage, I was accompanied by my trusty sidekick. She walked her separate ways, but I went to go clean off the desk. So now we're going to find the legs and the top planks. I found some planks that would work in base drop. After I got those planks, I went back to grab the others. After I got all the wood, I measured them off to the appropriate length. After I measured everything off, I brought it over to the miter saw and then I did some sick transitions with the wood. After I cut those, I didn't want to record the rest because that's a lot of footage, so I just did some cool magic. Wow. Finally, after cutting the planks to the proper size, I took it out to the planer because they looked nasty. After I did some new school planing, I went to do some old school planing. I took the hand planer and planed off the sides. After that, I stacked them all together and realized one of them had a crack, so I had to glue that up. And finally, day one was complete. I closed up the garage, looked over at the sky, and boom! Transition. It's now the next day, so I reopened the garage and got back to work. I needed to cut off about 1 inch of the ends, so here I'm just separating the good ends with the bad ends. After I finished that up, I walked over to the other plank and took off the clamp and peeled down the tape. The glue had dripped down a little bit, so I had to peel that off. I lined everything up and then measured off about 1 inch of the wood. I brought those over to the miter saw and then cut off the ends. After finishing that up, the edges are pretty rough, so I sanded those down. Next, I needed to cut 45-degree angles into the edges, and then I realized about halfway down that the miter saw isn't tall enough, so I took it out and then used a circular saw to cut them instead. After I finished up all that, I coiled up the wire and took the circular saw out. I cleaned up all the scraps and threw them in the trash, and then I was left with all these pointy edges, so I had to sand those down as well. Now for the actual assembly, I measured it out to make sure it was the right length. After finding that to be true, I walked out to the barn and grabbed a 2x4. This 2x4 is about 10 feet long, so I'll be able to get a lot of use out of it. After struggling with the tape measure for about a minute, I realized that there was some bad spots on the wood. That's not going to be such a huge deal because we can just use the other end. After I figured out there was a good side, I measured out the proper length for the supports and then I cut those out. Now we can actually start assembling the table. After my drill went rogue on me, I decided to start working. I started by aligning the pieces and breaking my hand. I'm gonna stop talking because the rest of it is just assembling the wood. Oh look, I'm back. So after I figured out that it was sturdy enough to sit on, I was finished. Here's a quick look of what it looks like underneath the table. The edges weren't perfect because of the circular saw, and here's the final product. It's time to take it up and replace that old thing. And now we're done. Here's some quick shots. Also, I hated the way this video turned out. I'm going back to my old styles in the next video. Peace!